The gate looked permanent, like it had always belonged there. Thick steel bars, fresh weld marks, and 2 concrete posts still dark with moisture. A keypad blinked with calm authority, while a small camera sat angled toward the road, waiting for the next person to be judged. The sign was the worst part, not because it was clever, but because it was confident. HOA, access only. Overnight, someone had turned Jacob Kayfield's private access into a checkpoint. The truck idled behind him, heat shimmering off the hood, dust hanging in the air, as if the desert itself had stopped to watch. Jacob stood still, jaw tight, eyes scanning every bolt and bracket, recognizing a message that wasn't subtle at all. This was not a mistake. It was a claim. Far down the county road, a black and white SUV appeared, small against the red rock, but moving steadily closer. The word police catching sunlight as it came. Jacob had chosen the Utah desert for the same reason most people avoided it. Distance kept life honest. For nearly 7 years, he had lived on 20 rugged acres, far enough from the county road that noise died long before it reached his porch. His private access road was 4,000 feet of dusty switchbacks through sagebrush and stone, maintained by his own hands and trusted like a boundary line. The deed was clean. The property taxes were paid. The road existed for one purpose: to get him home. Cedar Summit Ranch, the HOA community sitting more than a mile away, felt like a different world. Its fences were straight, its mailboxes matched, and its rules carried the kind of confidence that comes from repetition. Jacob rarely thought about them until the day he saw Karen Sanders in town. Curly golden hair, a glowing dark pink blazer that looked too polished for a feed store, and a posture that suggested the world was always slightly out of compliance. She scanned people the way others scanned price tags, always searching for what needed correcting. Jacob felt it then, a faint tightening in his instincts, the sense that order was about to come looking for him. 2 mornings after that encounter, Jacob rounded the bend toward his road and met the welded gate. It wasn't a flimsy barrier tossed up in a hurry. It was industrial, new, and installed with purpose. Fresh concrete. Fresh welds. A keypad and camera arranged to imply authority. Jacob documented everything, not because he doubted what he saw, but because he understood what came next: denial, excuses, and paperwork weaponized into a story that made him the problem. He turned around before anger could make him reckless and drove straight to Cedar Summit's clubhouse. Inside, the meeting room looked more like a small council chamber than a neighborhood space. Karen sat at the center of it, composed and certain, while Glenn stood nearby clutching a clipboard like a shield. Jacob laid out his photos and the deeded reality of the road, expecting at least a pause, at least a flicker of uncertainty. Instead, he watched Karen treat ownership as negotiable, as if the right form and the right vote could rewrite property lines. She pushed procedures, authorization requests, and a so-called protective buffer that somehow included land she did not own. Jacob left before the room could turn into a spectacle, but the message followed him out. The HOA believed it could decide where his life began and ended. Jacob refused to trade insults or spiral into a shouting match that would later be framed against him. He called Lieutenant Mark Dorsey, a friend who knew the area and respected boundaries that were written in law, not in HOA newsletters. Dorsey arrived fast, stepping onto the dusty road with the steady calm of someone who had seen entitlement dressed up as authority before. He studied the welds, the sign, the camera angle, the placement of the posts, and the arrogance behind every inch of it. Officer Wheeler arrived with tools, the kind of practical presence that made the gate look less like a symbol and more like evidence. A white SUV rolled up with HOA branding bold on the door, and Karen stepped out in that glowing dark pink blazer as if she had come to supervise the outcome. The moment lasted until Dorsey treated the barrier as what it was: obstruction on private property. Wheeler cut the lock cleanly, and the gate sagged, suddenly stripped of its pretend power. Dust swirled around Karen's shoes as she retreated to her SUV, leaving in a hurry that betrayed her confidence. By afternoon, Cedar Summit issued a bulletin reframing Jacob as an outsider threat. Soon after, a fine appeared, loud with formatting and fake authority, demanding thousands for tampering. It wasn't enforcement. It was intimidation, printed to look official and delivered to make him flinch. The next day, the conflict sharpened into something colder. A second camera appeared higher up, angled not just at the gate but toward Jacob's home, turning the situation from overreach into surveillance. A new gate followed, heavier and more expensive, as if money could make the claim legitimate. The keypad system was carelessly configured, the kind of rushed installation that relied on fear more than function. Jacob didn't touch it in anger. He documented it, photographed the settings, and logged every change the HOA made, building a timeline that couldn't be argued away. Late that night, headlights crawled up the road with deliberate caution. Karen returned with Glenn and a trunk full of props meant to manufacture a narrative: cones, reflective tape, and tools arranged to suggest wrongdoing where none existed. The staging had a rhythm that felt practiced, a performance designed for a future complaint. Jacob stayed off the road and out of sight, letting his trail cameras capture the scene without confrontation. The next day, Glenn cracked under the weight of what he was participating in and quietly delivered copies of internal notes. The language was not about safety, it was about control, pressure, and forcing an agreement by any means. Then a manila envelope appeared at Jacob's mailbox without a proper delivery trail. Inside was a forged document claiming the HOA had jurisdiction over the road, complete with a signature that did not belong to the name printed beneath it. Jacob's attorney, Tom Delgado, moved quickly once he saw the forgery. The paper stock, the formatting, and the timing were all wrong, the kind of sloppy fabrication that relied on intimidation rather than scrutiny. Tom gathered receipts and records, secured a sworn statement from the previous owner denying any agreement, and organized the internal notes Glenn had risked everything to provide. In court, Karen arrived with binders stacked high, projecting certainty through volume, as if paperwork could become truth through repetition. Cedar Summit's case leaned hard on safety claims and the forged agreement, trying to paint the road as a necessity corridor that justified taking it. The evidence crushed that narrative. Tom presented the timeline, the printing trail, and the internal language that revealed intent. The staged midnight activity didn't make Karen look protective, it made her look calculated. The judge's patience thinned with every contradiction. The case collapsed in full view of the room, not with drama, but with clarity. Dismissal came with consequences: fines for falsified evidence, restitution and legal fees, removal from leadership, and referral for criminal review. Karen's posture changed as the authority she had tried to imitate turned toward her, stripping away the illusion that she could threaten her way into ownership. In the days that followed, the welded steel was hauled away like scrap because that was all it ever was: expensive arrogance bolted to someone else's land. Cedar Summit's board scrambled to contain the fallout. Policies were quietly rewritten. The aggressive buffer language disappeared. Security updates were reframed as boundaries the HOA could never cross again. The community's tone changed overnight, not because it found empathy, but because consequences had finally made the cost of intimidation real. Karen's downfall didn't look cinematic up close. It looked like liens, legal bills, forced resignation, and a shrinking circle of supporters. A for sale sign eventually appeared, the kind of quiet ending that follows loud entitlement when it runs out of places to hide. Glenn faded back into normal life, shaken and relieved, learning too late how fast fear turns into complicity. Jacob got his road back, but more than that, he got proof that patience and documentation beat rage every time. The desert returned to silence, yet it felt different now: earned, protected, and understood. For anyone who has faced an HOA power grab, the question remains: how many people would try to take what is not theirs if they thought nobody would push back, and what would happen if more homeowners did?